40 years. That's how long he lived alone in those mountains. No visitors, no contact, no trace. In 1885, a man walked into the Appalachian wilderness and disappeared. His family searched. The authorities investigated, but he was gone. For 4 decades, rumors circulated. Some said he was dead. Others claimed they'd seen smoke from his chimney. But no one knew for certain. Until 1925, when hunters stumbled upon his cabin and discovered what he had been doing all those years. What they found inside changed everything they thought they knew about isolation. Welcome back to Dark True Crime, where we investigate the cases history tried to bury. If you're new here, subscribe and turn on notifications. This channel uncovers forgotten crimes with forensic analysis and historical research. Today's case takes us to the Appalachian Mountains, 1925, to a man who chose complete isolation. And the disturbing secret he kept for 40 years. His name was Josiah Harlan, and he built a life where no one could find him. But when they finally did, they wished they hadn't. Josiah Harlan was born in 1845 in eastern Kentucky. The son of a coal miner and a school teacher, he was described as intelligent but odd, quiet, intense. He had few friends growing up. By age 20, he had become a school teacher himself. He married a woman named Sarah Collins in 1865. They had one son, David, born in 1867. On the surface, Josiah seemed like any other man in Appalachia. He worked. He provided for his family. He attended church. But inside, something was fracturing. In 1875, Sarah died of illness. Josiah was devastated. He became withdrawn, paranoid. He began talking about voices and watchers. He claimed people were plotting against him, that the government was monitoring him. His family grew concerned. But in 1875, there was no treatment for mental illness, no help available. Josiah spiraled deeper into paranoia. In March 1885, Josiah made an announcement. He was leaving civilization. He would live in the mountains, alone, away from the corruption of society. His family begged him to stay. His son David, now 18, pleaded with him. But Josiah was resolute. He packed supplies. He took tools, seeds, books, and his rifle, and he walked into the Appalachian wilderness. He was 40 years old, and he would not be seen again for 4 decades. For the first few years, his family searched. They hired trackers. They organized search parties. They found nothing. No cabin, no trace, no body. By 1890, most assumed Josiah was dead. His son David held a funeral, a symbolic burial, but the rumors never stopped. Hunters claimed they'd seen smoke rising from deep in the mountains. Trappers reported finding strange markings on trees. A few swore they'd glimpsed a man watching them from the ridges. But no one could prove anything. Josiah Harlan had vanished completely. Before we continue, let's understand what drives someone to complete isolation. Extreme hermits, people who abandon society entirely, often show these patterns. 1. Severe social anxiety or trauma. A triggering event, often loss or betrayal, makes human contact unbearable. 2. Delusional thinking. Paranoia about government, society, or persecution becomes all-consuming. 3. A need for absolute control. In isolation, they control everything. No unpredictability, no threats. Dr. Michael Yapko, a psychologist who studies isolation, explains, for some individuals, the chaos of human interaction becomes so overwhelming that complete withdrawal feels like the only safe option. They're not escaping to something. They're escaping from everything. In Josiah's case, the death of his wife likely triggered a mental break. His paranoia intensified. The only solution he could imagine was total removal from society. But isolation doesn't cure mental illness. It amplifies it. and for 40 years Josiah lived alone with his deteriorating mind. In October 1925, two hunters, brothers named Thomas and Michael Green, were tracking deer in a remote section of the Appalachian Mountains. They were miles from any known trail, in an area so dense and steep that most people avoided it entirely. That's when they saw the cabin. It was small, crude, built from logs and mud, partially hidden by overgrown vegetation. At first, they thought it was abandoned, a relic from decades past, but then they noticed the chimney and the smell. Something was rotting inside. The door was barred from the outside. Strange. Why would someone bar a door from the outside? Thomas forced it open. The smell hit them immediately. Death, decay. Something had died inside, and recently. They stepped in cautiously. The cabin was one room, dim, cluttered. There was a crude bed, a table, shelves lined with jars and books, and in the corner, slumped against the wall, was a body, a man, elderly, long white beard, dressed in tattered clothing. He had been dead for weeks, possibly months. But that wasn't the disturbing part. The disturbing part was what surrounded him. The walls were covered in writing, every inch, written in charcoal, scratched into wood, painted in what looked like blood, thousands of words, sentences, symbols, diagrams. The brothers stepped closer. The writings were paranoid ramblings, warnings about them, instructions for avoiding the Watchers, maps of safe zones in the mountains. But there was something else too. Tallies, hundreds of them, carved into the wall above the bed. Days. Josiah had been counting days. 14,600 tallies, 40 years. He had been alone for exactly 40 years, and he had marked every single day. On the table, they found journals, dozens of them handwritten, dated. The brothers took them to the local sheriff. When authorities arrived at the cabin, they confirmed the worst. The body was Josiah Harlan, dead of natural causes, likely a heart attack, sometime in the summer of 1925. He had been 80 years old, but the journals revealed the true horror. Josiah's writings started coherent. In the early years, 1885 to 1895, he documented his daily life, building the cabin, hunting, foraging, surviving. But around 1900, the entries changed. He began writing about them, people watching him, shadows moving through the trees, voices calling his name. He described elaborate rituals to keep them away. He would only leave the cabin at certain times. He drew symbols around the perimeter. He slept in shifts to stay vigilant. By 1910, the paranoia was all-consuming. He wrote, "They are closer now. I can hear them breathing outside the walls. I must not sleep. If I sleep, they will come inside." He described seeing faces in the windows, hearing footsteps on the roof, finding his tools moved when he wasn't looking. None of it was real, but to Josiah it was absolute truth. He had descended into severe psychosis alone, with no one to help him, no medication, no intervention. His mind had broken completely, and he lived that way for 40 years. The final entry, written weeks before his death, was simple. "I am tired, they have won." Authorities found no evidence of anyone else ever visiting the cabin, no footprints, no traces of other people. Josiah had been completely alone. The Watchers he feared. Hallucinations, paranoid delusions. He had spent 4 decades running from threats that didn't exist. When word reached Josiah's son David, now 58 years old, he traveled to the cabin. He stood in that small, dark room. He read his father's journals. He saw the tally marks, 14,600 days, alone, terrified, slowly losing his mind. David wept. He had assumed his father was dead. He had mourned him decades ago, but the truth was worse. His father had been alive all those years, suffering, alone, and no one had saved him. David arranged for Josiah's body to be buried in the family cemetery. The cabin was left to decay. The journals were donated to a historical society. They remain there today, a record of one man's descent into madness. The case of Josiah Harlan is a tragedy of mental illness and isolation. In 1885, there was no understanding of psychosis, no treatment, no support systems. When Josiah walked into those mountains, he was already broken, and isolation shattered him completely. His story raises difficult questions. How many others like Josiah existed in history? How many people suffering from mental illness were written off as odd or eccentric and left to deteriorate alone? In remote areas, Appalachia, the frontier, isolated islands, how many people lived and died in the grip of untreated mental illness? Josiah's only mistake was being born in a time when help didn't exist. Next week, we travel to Papua New Guinea, 1932, to a missionary who went to save souls, and the horrifying discovery made when his mission went silent. What are your thoughts on the Josiah Harlan case? How do we help the isolated today? Drop your comments below. If you found this case disturbing, hit that like button and subscribe for more forgotten crimes. I'm Dark True Crime, and history's darkest secrets are waiting.